Well, it happens every year. Jack Frost shows up in the vegetable garden and often catches me by surprise. Last night, it dropped down to 28 degrees here at Moss Mountain Farm, and there's still plenty of produce here. One of the things I want to focus on today are some of the tomatoes we've been growing here. Now, we've been picking the ripe ones all along. They're juicy and tasty, of course, but what do we do with this bevy of green tomatoes? Those that didn't quite get ripe before the frost. Before we go any further, I'd like to thank our sponsors. The garden tours are made possible by Gilbert H. Wild & Son, who've been growing beautiful perennials since 1885. Ralston Family Farms, a farm family producing delicious rice for your table. First Community Bank, whose heart is in the community, as well as Sun Patience, Super Cal Petunias, and Dragon's Breath Celosia, and Crystal Bridges, Museum of American Art. Check out my website to learn more about the brands we love. Well, you don't have to look very far here to see the frost damage. You can just look at the leaves of these tomatoes. They're very sensitive to the cold, and a lot of folks go, how can you have so many tomatoes in November? Well, in this zone, zone 8A, what I like to do is, because it gets so hot in the summer, is I like to plant the tomatoes really early in the spring, as early as I can, and I get that early summer crop before it gets really hot. And then I like to take seed, because the soil is really warm, and just plant tomato seed directly into the ground in August, okay? The baby tomato plants love the heat. They love it. And they grow very rapidly. And then by the time it begins to cool off a little bit, by October, there's a fruit set is all over them. And you can just see, look at all these green tomatoes here, look at this basket, and I've just gotten started. And I hate to see these things go to waste. So what I like to do is gather these green tomatoes and either let the large ones finish ripening in the window. Like this one, you can see this one has a little bit of a blush on it. So that's a candidate for just setting in the windowsill and just allowing it to ripen, or just sit it in the kitchen. Now, my grandparents used to wrap these in brown paper sacks, and they could be stored in the dark, and they would ripen in the sacks just by placing them in a cool cellar. But what I like to do is to take these green tomatoes and make something luscious. Crazy about Chow Chow. How many of you know about Chow Chow? Well, it's an old Southern thing where you take really just about anything that's left in the garden. It's got kind of a sweep the floor recipe. It's just a type of relish, really. Where they came up with the name Chow Chow, I don't know. But anyway, it's making my mouth water just thinking about it. I love to eat field peas and greens, and putting Chow Chow on field peas with cornbread. Oh, man, it is so good. So that's the fate of these green tomatoes. They're going to find their way into the kitchen, and we're going to have some fun and come up with some great relish, or Chow Chow, as we like to say in this part of the world. I don't know about your family, but when I was growing up, we saved everything. And so I have this need to make sure that nothing goes to waste. So those green tomatoes that are out there, they have to find a home when that first cold snap comes along. And one of the best ways to do that is to create a wonderful green tomato relish, or in certain parts of the South, it's called Chow Chow. Why? I don't really know, but it sure tastes good, and I love it. And what I'm going to do here is show you a simple, there's so many recipes to this. I mean, it's like a sweep the floor kind of thing. It's like any vegetables that you kind of have at the end of the season or at any time, you can make this relish with it. And you can make it where it can stay in the refrigerator. You have to keep it chilled if you don't take it through the proper canning procedure of a hot water bath, or in some sort of pressure cooker and so forth. So really today I want to show you just the recipe and how simple it is. And if you want to do the hot water bath and seal it where you can keep them through the entire winter, which I'm going to do some of those as well, but today I just wanted to show you the recipe and just let you know there are a couple of ways that you can preserve it. Short term in the refrigerator, long term you have to do the hot water bath or the pressure cooker. So what I'm going to start with, of course, are the green tomatoes. And I've taken about 8 to 10 medium-sized tomatoes and I've diced those. This time of year they don't seem to be that juicy, which is actually kind of good for this recipe. I happen to have a half a head of Savoy cabbage in the refrigerator. So my great aunt, who many of you have seen on my show, she does Aunt Jamie's cookies. She likes to put a little cabbage in her Chow Chow, so I'm taking my lead from her. And isn't that beautiful how I've mixed it all together? Already it's really, really, really beautiful. And then I just took a green pepper. We had a few of those in the garden coming along. Seems like the fall is always a good time for our peppers to start finally showing out. And then I took a red one for a little color. It was a little smaller. Again, the ratios of these things don't really matter. It just seems like you need like a lot of the green tomatoes and fewer other things. Then onion, just add some white onion. This is half of a large white onion. And I prefer white onion over a red onion because of the color. The purple just kind of discolors the Chow Chow. But you can see how beautiful this is already just with those fresh vegetables. And the aroma is really marvelous. Okay, now I'm going to turn on the heat here. I'm going to put it on. I want to bring this to a boil, and to do that I'm going to take a cup of water, bring the liquid into this, and then 2 tablespoons of a vinegar, a white distilled vinegar. You could use apple cider vinegar if you want, and sometimes I use a little more vinegar. I like it really tart, so it's kind of up to you. So what you want to do is cook this down. I kind of want to bring it to a full boil, which is not going to take that long. And then I'm going to let it simmer for about 40 minutes. Okay, now, once I've got some heat going here, I'm going to go ahead and start adding some of those spices. And again, you can kind of come up with your own, but what I like to use is about 2 tablespoons of brown sugar, and then 1 teaspoon of salt. Just going to sprinkle that evenly across there. And I'm just going to mix that in. And then we're going to add some true spices to it. It gives it a little kick. So now for the spicy bits, I'm going to do a half a teaspoon of cardamom. I'm going to distribute that evenly. A little bit goes a long way. And then I have a half a teaspoon of dried ginger. And then I have a half a teaspoon of mustard, ground mustard seed. I've even used whole mustard seed. I mean, there's just so many different ways to do this. And if you like heat, you might even put maybe a little bit of jalapeno pepper in here if you like. So if you're one of those people who like, I gotta have the recipe exactly, this may make you nervous, but hey, just jump in there and give it a try. It could be good for you. And for those who are intuitive cooks and just like to kind of see cooking as a creative exercise, this is a field day. It's like an artist with a canvas and you just get to go at it. And I kind of like to do things that way. So, but I really try to give you exact measurements as I cook, because I know some folks really like to follow the measurements. There's nothing wrong with that. Particularly if you're a baker, you really need to follow those directions and you really need to get those ingredients in there precisely and in a certain order and time and all that. You know what I'm talking about. Okay, so it's all mixed up. Let's see, it's getting a little hot, but I just want to show you what it looks like here. Oops. So at this point, you kind of, again, have to decide how you want your relish or your Chow Chow to come out. I like mine a little juicy. I like the vinegar and the sauce, as it were, to put on peas and things like that, field peas. So I like my relish not as firm. Some people like it to be a firmer kind of relish where you can kind of spoon it out and it holds its form. So if you, in the camp where you like more juice, then here's where you would put the lid on top. If you're someone who likes a firmer relish, a firmer chow chow, you would let the liquid cook down during this period. And of course you want to stir it every once in a while. And then you would ladle it and then fill up your jars with it. It's this simple. Okay, like I told you, I like mine a little juicier. So I hope that this segment on green tomatoes has inspired you to think about food a little differently, like use everything in some form and get creative with it. And I hope it's inspired you to maybe plant a second crop of tomatoes when it gets really hot in the summer so you've got lots of green ones. All the little ones, the ones that have imperfections, go into this. But the big green ones, I love those fried. How about you? Are you a fried green tomato fan? I certainly am. Hey, if you've liked what you've seen, like the video. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do. And if you would like for me to let you know when we have new content going up, just ring the bell. Tell your friends about us. Come see us at Moss Mountain Farm and get our weekly newsletter every Friday just by going to plnsmith.com and pressing newsletter. We'll send it to you. All right? Until next time, get out there and have some fun in the garden and the kitchen.